Ladies and gentlemen, it is once again a Monday, which means that we are back with another awesome car from the RPM Garage inventory, and today is a truly interesting car indeed. As you may or may not be able to tell, this is a C7 Corvette, but more specifically, it is a 2014 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray 2LT, which means that it has a couple of extra features that the base model Stingrays do not offer. And of course, as you can probably tell, this is by no means a stock Corvette. So with that in mind, today we are going to talk a lot about how cool this car is inside, outside, and of course under the hood, explain some of the reasons that it is such an awesome car, and of course, as always, tell you guys exactly why you should come down to RPM Garage today to check it out, test drive it, maybe even buy it. Let's get into it. Now, at this point in the video, we usually talk a little bit more about the exterior, and this is no exception. However, because this car has had most of its exterior cosmetic modifications done at the rear, it makes a lot of sense that we start there instead of at the front, which is our usual process. Now, before I dive into all of these awesome exterior modifications that have been bolted onto the car, I want to talk about the finish of the car itself. And if you're not familiar with Corvettes, this is not a stock finish. The stock finish is an awesome, very deep red color, as you can see right here, and it does look very nice. However, I do like the aftermarket finish much better. I do believe that it looks significantly better with all of the aftermarket modifications, especially at the rear. I think it contrasts very nicely against this black carbon fiber chassis-mounted MFR wing. Now, to talk about that wing just a little bit, this wing was actually designed for a C6 Corvette, so this is the generation newer than the C6, as you likely know. If you don't, it is. However, it has been converted to fit this car beautifully, and it is very sturdily mounted. As you can see, there is not really any room for error here. And of course, it does make sure that this car is insanely stable because of the downforce that it provides. Now, a couple of other things you may or may not have noticed. These taillights, for example, are awesome, and at first glance you might not realize that they are aftermarket, but they are, in fact, not stock. Now, one of the things I love about these taillights in particular are the reverse lights. They are placed down along this triangle at the end, and I do think that looks very, very nice on this car. One thing close to the ground you may or may not have noticed as well is, of course, the aftermarket diffuser. Now, it too looks awesome, especially against the light green matte paint, and of course in conjunction with all of the extra scaffolding that comes with this chassis-mounted wing. In the middle of those things, though, you may or may not have noticed the aftermarket Mbrp Exhaust. Now, this produces an absolutely ferocious note, and I will, of course, have a startup clip of that for you later in the video, so stick around until then. However, it sounds absolutely incredible, that much I can definitely assure you. So, with all of those aftermarket modifications on the back of this car, I personally think it looks amazing. And on my drive over to the filming location that we are currently at today, I encountered many people walking along the side of the road who all stopped, turned, and stared at this magnificent machine. I'm sure partly because of the loud noise it produces, and of course partly because of the aggressiveness of this wing. So with all of these things in mind, let's dive in under the hood and talk a little bit more about what's going on there, and then we'll dive into the interior. 2014 was an interesting year for the Corvette, and there's a very, very specific reason as to why. To explain that though, I do need to pop the hood. Now, Under this hood specifically is a 6.2 liter V8 engine, and that is not the specifically interesting part about this car, although it is interesting for its own reasons. Now, every C7 Corvette was offered, of course, with a 6.2 liter V8. Now, this one does happen to be naturally aspirated, as all base Corvettes are, but like the Z06, for example, is the 6.2 liter V8 that is also supercharged. Now, like the engine, all C7 Corvettes did have rear-wheel drive, but the mode of the power delivery to the rear wheels was different for 2014 than any other generation of C7. What do I mean by that? Well, the transmission on the C7 Corvette after the year 2015, including the year 2015, was either an 8-speed automatic or a 7-speed manual. But in the case of the 2014 model year, it still used the 6-speed automatic from the C6 Corvette, or at least a very similar transmission indeed. Now, it was also offered with the 7-speed manual that was unchanging throughout the C7 Corvette. Regardless, that is fascinating to me, especially because it does mean that this Corvette, by definition, is a bit rarer than any other automatic C7 from later model years, which is very, very cool to me because, of course, that is just a unique quirk to this car. Talking about the engine and speaking, of course, of unique things, this car also comes with a couple of aftermarket modifications under the hood. Now, I did mention earlier, of course, the Mbrp quad-tipped exhaust, and I'm very, very excited to do the startup on that. However, a couple of other things have been done as well, including speed engineering spark plugs and aftermarket long tube headers, which only aid the ferocious noise that we mentioned before in the video. That being said, of course, we can't start it up for you just yet because we do have to talk a little bit more about what's inside the car. So without further ado, let's hop on in. Once again, I find myself standing outside the interior of this awesome car talking about it. And that is, of course, not a fault of the car itself or of its interior, simply a fault of me not enjoying how I look on camera while sitting in this car. Which is not to say if you are 6'2" or taller, or shorter, that you would look bad sitting in this car. Quite the opposite. However, it is very, very awkward to film, so for that reason alone, I find myself standing here. But I digress. Now let's talk about the interior. Now, this car does come with the standard leather bucket seats, which are both supportive and very, very comfortable, but much more crucially, it comes with the 2LT package. If you're familiar with Corvettes, then you'll know that they're offered in a variety of trims from 1LT, 2LT, and to 3LT. And those are all very well and good. The 3LT is, of course, the highest trim. It offers pretty much everything you could want and quite a bit more. This is the 2LT, which offers everything you could want and one very crucial feature that many directionally challenged people often find themselves needing, and that is, of course, navigation. Now, that is not offered on the 1LT package, which does, of course, come with the rear view camera, the infotainment, the bucket seats, and all the nice things, but the 2LT package does add navigation and a couple of other useful comfort features. As a result, this is a very, very user-friendly car, and of course, a very, very driver-friendly car, so you will never find yourself getting lost while enjoying the opulent interior that is offered in this insanely powerful sports car. That being said, there are a couple of other interesting quirks. Now, this car does come with a bit of a cockpit-shaped interior, and what I mean by that is that it is all angled toward the driver. And that is totally cool if you're the driver, but if you're the passenger, that is a bit limiting when it comes to controlling some of the crucial things like air conditioning. Now, Chevrolet has thankfully thought of that, and they've decided that the best place for the passenger air conditioning controls are on the far right-hand vent on the passenger side. Now, I love this design. It does make the controls very, very accessible from the passenger seat, and though I personally am not ever going to ride shotgun in this car because I would only prefer to drive it, I obviously do think that's very, very useful in the event that there is someone in the passenger seat. Now, of course, there are a couple of other nice things as well. With these cars, you do have the opportunity to select your drive mode, and this car offers 5 different drive modes, ranging from eco-friendly to, of course, track, and a couple of other various ones in between. And that is awesome because it gives you the full opportunity and the full range to use this car to its maximum potential or for more comfortable daily driving. Now, that makes this car pretty very insane. And of course, the last key feature to it is its top. Now, the top of these cars, and specifically this car, is clear, which is very, very nice because it does mean that you get the quote-unquote sunroof effect. And of course, if you do feel like getting some fresh air in the cockpit, it's removable, so you can just pull it off and of course have a nice convertible for a nice day such as today. However, because I am kind of flying back and forth from the RPM garage itself to the filming location, I didn't feel it was appropriate to take it off and put it back on for filming. So with that in mind, I highly recommend you do it if you do buy this car. Now, with all of that being said, let's finish up the video and then do a quick startup. Before we get to finishing the video though, I do have to say one quick thing, and that is of course the aftermarket front bumper. Now that is a hugely evident thing, but since I was talking about the exterior and its modifications at the back of the car, I wanted to leave it separate of course for the front. So as you can tell, it is very, very aggressive and it looks absolutely phenomenal, and it's very reminiscent of the new ZR1. Now, to wrap up the video. Now this car is obviously awesome, looking at it, driving it, and of course experiencing it from inside. But of course that must come with a price. Now, how much is that price, you ask? Well, in this case, this car is offered for $47,991, which is an absolute steal given the Corvette market right now, which has seen massive explosions in price, especially as the COVID virus has increased in size and volume. Now, of course, you may be asking, well, if I'm paying that much, how many miles are on the car? Now, this car has 63,000 miles on it, which is by no means a lot, especially given that you are getting a GM-produced V8 engine. Now, that is, of course, an insanely reliable engine, and it is, of course, why so many people rely on various GM engines for engine swaps and, of course, their own builds. Now, obviously, I very much love this car, and I am currently shopping for a C7 myself. However, I do not think I'm going to choose this one, but I urge you to do so because I simply just can't afford to. Since you can, or hopefully might be able to, I strongly urge you to come check this out because it is a truly awesome machine, and it is of course very much one of a kind. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank each and every single one of you for watching today's video, and I highly urge you to like, share, and of course subscribe to the RPM Garage channel. It means very, very much to myself and the rest of the RPM team. I also very, very much hope you'll check out our Instagram, our Facebook, and our TikTok. Those will all be linked in the description below. And check out our inventory because we do have a lot of cars in at the moment, and we would be more than happy to sell you one of them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.